Imagine sitting at your own family's dinner table, everyone laughing and talking, and then your mother turns to you and calls you the biggest disappointment she's ever had. That's exactly what happened to me. My name is Rowena, but everyone calls me Ro, and I'm 27. What nobody at that table knew that night was that I had secretly been paying $61,000 to stop the bank from taking away the very house we were sitting in. The air was thick with the smell of roast chicken and garlic bread. My mom, Lorraine, had her wine glass in hand, smiling proudly at my sister Celeste and my brother Travis as she told stories about their latest achievements. Celeste had just landed a promotion, Travis had bought a new car. Dad, as usual, just sat quietly at the end of the table, nodding along and chewing his food without much expression. Then my mom's eyes shifted toward me. She didn't smile. She didn't soften. She tilted her head slightly and said, "And then there's Ro. Still the biggest disappointment. I don't even know what you do with your life." The laughter from Celeste and Travis stung like salt on an open wound. Even Dad didn't look up. He just cut another piece of meat and kept eating as if he hadn't heard a thing. My face felt hot and my throat tightened, but I forced myself to stay quiet. If only they knew what I had done for them. If only they knew that every paycheck I earned for the past 5 years had gone straight into saving this roof over their heads. I looked around the table at the people I had sacrificed so much for. Celeste was swirling her wine, smirking, enjoying the moment. Travis leaned back, grinning like it was some kind of joke. And my mother, my own mother, kept going, saying I was ungrateful, that I'd never measure up to my siblings. She had no idea that the reason she still had her perfect home to host these dinners was because of me. I wanted to scream it right then. I wanted to slam down the proof I had kept tucked away for years. The payment slips, the bank letters, the receipts. But I didn't. Not yet. I sat there with my hands pressed into my lap, nails digging into my palms, swallowing the truth that burned in my chest. They thought I was nothing. They thought I was weak. But in that moment, as they mocked me, I knew something they didn't. The house they were sitting in, the warm lights above their heads, the food on the table, the comfort they took for granted, it all existed because of me. And I promised myself that before the night ended, they were going to find out. Lorraine had a way of speaking that could slice through a room. Every word from her mouth carried weight, not because of wisdom but because of the sharpness behind it. She liked things to look polished, flawless, picture-perfect, no matter how fake that picture was. To her, appearances mattered more than truth, more than kindness, more than the feelings of her own children. Beside her was Gerald, my father. He never fought her, never questioned her. If Lorraine was a storm, Gerald was the shadow behind the clouds, quiet, distant, careful not to provoke. He avoided every clash, even if it meant letting cruelty pass unchecked. Then there was Celeste, the star in my mother's eyes. The way Lorraine spoke about her, you would think she walked on water. Every small step Celeste took was painted as a triumph, a victory worth praise. She was spoiled, dressed in the best, handed every opportunity, yet Lorraine told everyone she was proof of her perfect parenting. Travis, my brother, lived carelessly, reckless in every sense. But somehow that didn't matter. His mistakes were brushed away, excused, even laughed at. If he messed up, Lorraine would sigh and shake her head, but there was always affection in her voice. He could do no wrong even when he did everything wrong. And then there was me, always the shadow, always the one left out. No matter what I did, it wasn't enough. If I tried, it was dismissed. If I failed, it was magnified. I was the one held up as the bad example, the one compared to Celeste's charm and Travis's boldness. Lorraine never missed a chance to point out how far behind I was, how little I had to show. Her comparisons were constant, deliberate. She would say Celeste was graceful and I was clumsy. She would laugh at Travis's recklessness, then turn to me and call me irresponsible. To her, I was the reminder of what not to be, the child who never lived up to her standards, the piece that didn't fit into her carefully polished picture. No matter how many times I tried to prove myself, it was never seen, never acknowledged. In that house I had a place, but it wasn't one of pride or belonging. It was the role of the odd one out, the child who bore the weight of her disapproval while my siblings basked in her praise. That was the family I grew up in. A mother whose words cut deeper than she would ever admit. A father who stayed silent when silence hurt the most. A sister celebrated for every breath she took. A brother forgiven for every reckless act. And me, always standing apart, always compared, always told without words and with them that I was less. 5 years ago I was the one who opened the mailbox and saw the envelope no one else had bothered to check. Inside were letters from the bank, warnings about missed payments, threats about taking the house. Page after page stamped with deadlines, interest, and numbers that spelled out only one thing: foreclosure. I didn't tell anyone. I folded the papers back up, slid them into my bag, and carried the weight alone. While everyone else went about their days, I was the one who knew the truth. I couldn't watch the place where we all lived slip away, so I made a choice. I picked up a second job. Days bled into nights, weekends disappeared, and sleep became something I had to steal in fragments. Friends stopped asking me to come out because I was always working, always too tired, always unavailable. My world shrank to paychecks and bills. I drove the same old car that coughed smoke when I started it, the one with the broken heater and the dent in the side door. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself every extra dollar had to go toward the payments. New clothes, vacations, dinners out. None of that existed for me. Month after month, I sent money straight to the mortgage company. Thousands poured out of my hands, unnoticed, unacknowledged, unspoken. Each time I mailed a check or clicked submit, I thought about how close we had come to losing everything. And each time I reminded myself why I was doing it. To keep a roof over all of us, even the ones who never cared to ask. While Celeste decorated her room with new furniture and Travis filled the driveway with his cars, I counted coins at the grocery store to make sure I had enough for bread and rice. I watched them stretch out on the couch in comfort while I sat quietly, knowing I was the reason that comfort still existed. I carried the secret through birthdays, holidays, and ordinary days. No one suspected. No one noticed the sacrifices I made. They lived without fear while I lived with the constant knot in my chest, knowing one missed shift, one late payment, could bring the bank back to the door. And so the years passed. 5 of them. 5 years of giving up pieces of myself, all so they could stay in a house they thought was theirs by right. 5 years of silence while I paid the price they never even saw. The table was full, plates passed around, the clatter of forks against china, voices rising over one another. For a moment it almost sounded like a family. Then Lorraine's voice cut through everything. She leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on me, and said, "What do you even contribute?" "Nothing." Celeste's lips curled into a smirk, sharp and satisfied, as if she'd been waiting for the moment. She didn't need to add words. Her expression carried enough. Across from her, Travis chuckled and shook his head, tossing in a quick jab that made everyone else laugh except me. His voice was playful, careless, but the sting landed all the same. At the end of the table, Gerald kept his head low, carving into his food like it was the only thing in the room worth noticing. His silence was louder than anything he could have said. He didn't look at me, didn't look at her, didn't look anywhere except at his plate. I sat there, my hands tight around my fork, my jaw locked. The years of small cuts, the comparisons, the dismissals, all of it pressed down on me at once. My chest burned, not just from the words, but from the certainty that this was never going to change. The laughter faded, the clinking slowed, but the ache stayed. Betrayal wasn't in a single sentence. It was in every year behind it, every time I had been pushed aside, every moment I had been reminded that I was less. And in that chair, with their eyes on me or away from me, I felt it all at once, heavier than ever. I kept my voice steady, even though my pulse hammered in my throat. I set my fork down and looked straight at Lorraine. "Do you love living in this house?" Her laugh was sharp, humorless. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. "Of course I do. What kind of question is that? Don't be rude at the table." I didn't flinch. "Because if you do, then maybe you should know it's only standing because of me." The words dropped heavy between us. For a moment nobody moved. Celeste blinked, Travis's grin froze halfway, and Gerald's knife stopped scraping against his plate. Lorraine stared at me, her lips parting as if she hadn't heard right. I leaned forward, my tone still calm. "The bank was ready to take it 5 years ago. And every single payment that's kept it safe since then? That was me." The silence deepened, thick enough to choke on. Celeste let out a short laugh, almost nervous. "You're joking, right?" Travis shook his head, squinting at me like I'd lost my mind. "No way. Come on." But I didn't back down. I held their stares one by one and waited. I wanted them to see I wasn't smiling, wasn't playing, wasn't pretending. And in that stillness it hit them. I wasn't joking. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder I had kept hidden for years. Without saying a word, I placed it in the center of the table and slid it open. Pages fanned out. Bank statements, stamped receipts, payment records lined with dates and amounts. The room went still. The only sound was the faint hum of the overhead light. Forks rested untouched. Glasses stood frozen mid-reach. Every eye turned to the papers in front of them. Lorraine's face shifted first. Color rose high on her cheeks, not the flush of guilt, but the heat of being unmasked. Her lips pressed tight as though she could will the evidence out of existence. Celeste's smirk fell away. Her eyes darted across the numbers, disbelief widening them with each line she read. The confidence she carried only minutes ago drained, leaving her expression pale and uncertain. Travis leaned forward, muttering under his breath, "No way. No way." He pushed a page aside, searching for some trick, some flaw that would make it untrue. But the proof was plain, black ink against white paper, undeniable. At the far end, Gerald didn't speak. He just blinked slowly, knife and fork still in his hands, as if he couldn't quite process what was in front of him. His silence was heavier than ever, a weight pressing down over the table. And for the first time in my life, the balance shifted. Their voices faltered, their confidence cracked, their power dissolved. The evidence sat there, undeniable, and they couldn't laugh it off or brush it aside. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking under their gaze. For once I held it. The room belonged to me. Lorraine's chair scraped hard against the floor as she pushed back, her voice cutting through the silence. "This is ridiculous. You're making things up. How dare you stand there and act like some savior? You're ungrateful, a liar, always twisting stories to make yourself look better." Her words snapped something inside me. I leaned forward, no longer calm, no longer quiet. Ungrateful? I worked shifts that broke my body just to keep this place standing. I walked home at dawn more times than I can count because I couldn't afford gas. While you all slept comfortably, I was out there working myself sick. Lorraine tried to interrupt, but I didn't stop. My voice shook, not from weakness but from everything I had swallowed for years. Do you know what it's like to put off going to the doctor because you can't afford the bill? To ignore pain because every dollar has to go toward a mortgage you didn't even know existed? I skipped meals. I patched up clothes until they fell apart. And still, I sent that money, every single month, because I thought keeping this roof over your heads mattered more than anything I wanted for myself. The words hung in the air, raw and jagged. Celeste sat frozen, lips pressed tight, her earlier smugness gone. Travis looked down at his lap, shoulders stiff, no joke ready this time. Their silence said everything. At the end of the table, Gerald's hands twitched against his fork. He shifted in his seat, eyes fixed on his plate, fidgeting like a man who wanted to disappear. He wouldn't meet my eyes, not once. I looked at each of them, breath unsteady, but I didn't back down. For years they had spoken over me, laughed at me, dismissed me. Not tonight. Tonight they heard me whether they wanted to or not. I straightened in my chair, the folder of papers still open between us. My voice was steady, sharper than it had ever been in that house. "I'm finished. I have my own place now. From this point on, the house is your problem, not mine." The words hit harder than any proof I had shown before. Lorraine's face twisted, anger spilling out in a rush. "How dare you say that after everything we've given you? You think you can walk away and just abandon your family? You're ungrateful, you're cruel." Gerald finally raised his head, his voice low, almost pleading. "Ro, wait, don't do this. We can figure something out. Just don't turn your back on us." His hands twitched on the table, reaching as if he could pull me back with nothing but words. Celeste shook her head, muttering under her breath, but loud enough for me to hear. "Selfish. Always about her." The disgust in her tone was thinly veiled, the same contempt she had worn my whole life. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't need to. Their voices rolled over me, a storm I no longer cared to stand in. I pushed my chair back, slow and deliberate, the scrape of wood against tile louder than their accusations. When I stood, I lifted my chin, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Not with apology, not with fear, but with the certainty that I was done. Done carrying them, done hiding, done breaking myself for people who never once saw me. And without another word, I turned and walked out, leaving their voices behind me at the table. Weeks passed and my phone lit up day after day with her number. Lorraine's messages piled one after another. Pleading at first, then demanding, then desperate again. Long voicemails about how much she needed me, how the house was at risk, how I was the only one who could fix it. I didn't answer. I read the words, listened to the tone, then set the phone down. Not once did I hear an apology. Not once did she admit the truth of what she'd done to me. It was only about the house, about her fear, about losing what she thought belonged to her. Then Travis called, his voice sharp with anger. "You're tearing this family apart, Ro. Do you even care what happens to us?" I let the silence stretch before I answered. My voice came out cold, even unshaken. "The family tore me apart years ago." I ended the call before he could speak again. I kept my promise to myself. Not a single cent left my account. The checks stopped, the payments ceased. I lived in my own space, small but mine, while the weight of the debt shifted back where it always should have been. And when the knock came at their door, it wasn't mine to answer anymore. In the quiet of my new place, I finally let myself breathe. The walls were bare, the furniture simple, but every corner felt alive because it belonged to me. The money had never been the wound. It was what came with it, the way my effort had been invisible, the way my existence had been measured against people who never sacrificed a thing. What broke me wasn't the long hours or the empty wallet. It was sitting year after year in that house and knowing I could vanish and it wouldn't matter, not to them. I wasn't seen. I wasn't valued. That was the real debt, and it had cost more than dollars ever could. The betrayal had been steady, a slow drip that carved deep into me. But now, standing here, I realized revenge didn't have to be loud. It didn't have to be cruel. My revenge was leaving it all behind. The insults, the silence, the weight of carrying people who would never carry me. I closed my fingers around the keys in my hand, cool metal pressing against my skin. I looked around the small apartment, the first space that was only mine, and a whisper slipped from my lips, steady and certain. "This is mine." Do you think I was right to walk away, or should I have given them another chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like mine, subscribe and stay tuned.